It wasn't the kind of night that hinted at violence. The air was cool, the streets alive with weekend chatter, and inside Murphy's Tavern, the warm hum of conversation wrapped around us like a comfortable cocoon. I was sitting at the corner of a booth, nursing a whiskey, while Mira, my girlfriend of 6 years, effortlessly commanded the room's attention. She was talking to her friend Steph, her laughter cutting through the noise like sunlight through fog. But my attention was on someone else, Nick, one of Mira's coworkers, new to their office but already ingrained in their social circle. He wasn't doing anything blatantly disrespectful, just leaning a little too close to her, his eyes lingering longer than they should. Something about the way he moved, the way his body curved toward hers like a moth drawn to a flame, set my teeth on edge. I told myself to let it go. Mira had always been the outgoing one between us, the kind of person who could strike up a conversation with anyone and make them feel like they mattered. Nick probably mistook her warmth for something else. It was only later, when Steph excused herself to the restroom and I came back with her drink, that I noticed Mira and Nick were gone. Their chairs sat empty, their drinks still sweating condensation on the table. Did Mira say where she went? I asked Nate, a mutual friend sitting beside me. She said something about fresh air. Nick's call must have gone long, he said, though his tone wavered like a thread about to snap. Right? I muttered, setting Steph's drink down and stepping toward the door. The night air was biting, a sharp contrast to the warmth inside. Outside, the patio was deserted, except for a group of smokers near the far edge. My breath fogged as I scanned the shadows. The uneasy knot in my stomach tightened. When I didn't find them there, I circled the parking lot, weaving through rows of cars. My footsteps felt heavier with every step, a creeping sense of humiliation and rage coiling around my chest. This was ridiculous. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. Mira's name lit up the screen. "Hey," she said, her voice annoyingly light, as if nothing had happened. "Where are you?" I snapped, the sharpness of my tone startling even me. "Relax," she said with an almost laugh. I stepped out for some air. Nick was out here too, so we chatted. "It's no big deal." No big deal. My voice rose, the words spilling out like a dam had broken. "You disappear without a word. Leave me sitting there looking like an idiot, and you're telling me it's no big deal? God, Cain, don't be so dramatic," she said, her voice hardening. "I'll be back in a minute, okay? Calm down." The call ended before I could respond, the dial tone mocking me. I stood there, the phone still pressed to my ear, the cold seeping through my jacket and into my skin. She didn't come back for another 10 minutes. When she did, it was with a smile so casual it made my blood boil. Nick followed behind her, his hands jammed into his coat pockets, his gaze flicking away when it met mine. Mira slid into the booth beside me, her smile untouched. "You cool now?" she asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. I didn't answer, my eyes boring into her as the rage inside me began to solidify into something darker. Something was broken, and for the first time I wasn't sure if it could be fixed. The bar was alive around us, but I barely noticed. Mira's casual smile, the way she brushed off my anger, made everything else blur. My pulse hammered in my ears as I leaned closer to her, lowering my voice so the others wouldn't hear. "Where were you?" I asked, my tone sharp enough to cut glass. She rolled her eyes, her hand reaching for her drink as though my question was an inconvenience. "I told you. Outside. Talking to Nick." "You need to chill, Cain." "Talking about what?" I pressed, my jaw tightening. She shrugged, a lazy gesture that only stoked the fire burning in my chest. "Work stuff, mostly. He's been stressed out, and I was just stressed out." I interrupted, my voice rising despite my effort to keep it even. "You think I'm stupid, Mira? I see the way he looks at you. I see the way you let him." Her head snapped toward me, her eyes narrowing into a glare. "Don't do this," she hissed. "Not here. Not now." "Why not?" "Afraid the truth might ruin your night." Steph shifted uncomfortably across the table, pretending to focus on her phone, while Nate muttered something about needing another round and hurried toward the bar. The table emptied, leaving us alone in a bubble of tension that felt ready to explode. "You're making a scene," Mira said, her voice low but venomous. I leaned in closer, my fists clenched under the table. "You already made it. Disappearing with him, lying to my face. You don't even care, do you?" Her eyes flicked toward the bar, where Nick lingered, his head tilted like he was straining to hear us. "Can we not do this in front of everyone?" she said, her voice softening, almost pleading. "Then tell me the truth," I said, my voice a quiet growl. "What's going on between you and him?" "Nothing," she said too quickly. "You're imagining things, Cain. This is all in your head." I stared at her, the denial only confirming what I already knew. The woman sitting across from me wasn't the Mira I thought I knew. She wasn't the woman I'd spent 6 years building a life with. This Mira was colder, crueler, and capable of a lie so bold it twisted my stomach. "I don't believe you," I said, standing. Her eyes widened, and for a second, I saw something flicker there. Panic, guilt, or maybe just fear of the consequences. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "Where are you going?" she asked, her voice sharper now, tinged with irritation. "To get some air," I said, throwing her words back at her like a dagger. I didn't wait for her response. I pushed past the table, past Nick, who flinched when our eyes met, and stepped into the night. Outside, the cold wrapped around me like a vice, but it did nothing to cool the fire raging inside. I paced the sidewalk, my mind racing, replaying every moment from the last few weeks that didn't add up. The late-night work calls, the sudden obsession with her appearance, the way she laughed a little too hard at Nick's jokes, even when they weren't funny. I pulled out my phone and opened her text history. Nothing unusual. Then her emails. Clean. Too clean. A chill ran down my spine as realization dawned. She was hiding something, and whatever it wasn't innocent. I turned back toward the bar, my vision tunneling as I walked inside. Mira's laugh rang out from our booth, but it wasn't directed at me. It was for him. For Nick. It was time to stop playing the fool. I didn't go straight back to the table. Instead, I lingered by the bar, watching them from a distance. Mira's body language spoke volumes. Leaning slightly toward Nick, her hand brushing his arm when she laughed. Her eyes lighting up in a way they hadn't with me in months. Nick, for his part, looked smug. Too smug. Like he knew exactly what he was doing, and like he didn't care. The whiskey I ordered burned as it went down, but it didn't dull the ache in my chest. If anything, it sharpened it. This wasn't paranoia. This wasn't some insecure fantasy. Mira was slipping through my fingers, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to catch her anymore. I waited until Nick stood to grab another drink. His path brought him close enough that I could reach out and stop him. "Nick," I said, my voice cold and steady. He froze, his head jerking toward me like a deer caught in headlights. "Oh, hey, Cain," he said, trying for casual but failing miserably. "We need to talk." He glanced nervously at the table where Mira sat, her smile faltering as she realized what was happening. Now's not really." "Now," I interrupted, the steel in my voice cutting through his excuses. I led him to the far corner of the bar, where the music was quieter and the shadows deeper. He shifted uncomfortably, his hands shoved into his pockets, his eyes darting everywhere but at me. "What's going on between you and Mira?" I asked, cutting straight to the point. "Nothing, man," he said quickly, too quickly. "We're just coworkers." "Don't lie to me," I said, stepping closer. "I've been watching you, watching her. I'm not stupid." Nick's mouth opened, then closed, his jaw tightening. He glanced toward the table again, as if hoping Mira would swoop in and save him. "She's not coming," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "So start talking." He hesitated, the weight of my words sinking in. Then he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Fine," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We've been seeing each other. It just sort of happened, okay? I didn't mean for it to get this far." "Seeing each other?" I repeated, the words dripping with venom. You mean screwing behind my back? Nick winced, but he didn't deny it. My fists clenched at my sides, the urge to hit him almost overwhelming. But I held back, barely. He wasn't worth it, not yet. How long? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. Couple of months, he admitted, avoiding my gaze. But it's not serious, man. She said things weren't good between you two. Don't you dare try to justify this. I snarled, cutting him off. You knew she was with me, and you did it anyway. That makes you just as guilty as her. Nick took a step back, his hands raised in a weak attempt at self-defense. Look, I'm sorry, okay? I'll back off. I didn't mean to. Save it. I snapped. You already crossed the line. You don't get to apologize and walk away like nothing happened. I turned and strode back toward the table, leaving him standing there, pale and shaking. Mira's eyes widened when she saw me approach, her confidence faltering for the first time that night. What did you say to him? She asked, her voice sharper than it should have been. The truth, I said, sitting down across from her, my voice cold and steady. I know about you too. Her face went pale, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by that same defiance she always wore when she felt cornered. So what? She said, crossing her arms. Are you going to make a scene? Embarrass me in front of everyone? No, I said, leaning forward, my voice a low growl. I'm going to give you a choice. You tell me the truth, all of it, or I walk out of here, and you'll never see me again. She hesitated, her eyes darting to Nick, who was still hovering near the bar, too cowardly to come back to the table. Choose, Mira, I said, my voice hard as steel. For the first time, she looked afraid. Mira's hands trembled as she reached for her drink, but she didn't take a sip. Her eyes darted between me and Nick, who lingered by the bar like a shadow, his cowardice plain for everyone to see. I don't know what you want me to say, Cain, she finally muttered, her voice shaky but defiant. I want the truth, I said, leaning in closer, my voice steady and cold. Not half-truths, not excuses. I want to hear it all, Mira. Now. Her jaw tightened, her fingers gripping the edge of the table like she was bracing for impact. Fine, she said, the words slicing through the air like a knife. You want the truth? Here it is. Nick and I have been seeing each other. It started a couple of months ago. We talked after work, went for drinks, and... She hesitated, her voice faltering. And what? I demanded. And it got physical? She finished, her voice barely above a whisper. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I didn't let it show. I held her gaze, refusing to let her see how deeply she'd cut me. Why? I asked, my voice calm, almost detached. Her eyes flashed with frustration. Why? She repeated, her voice rising. Because I was tired, Cain. Tired of feeling invisible. Tired of you burying yourself in your work and treating me like an afterthought. That's your excuse? I shot back, my tone sharp as broken glass. You could have talked to me, Mira. You could have told me how you felt. Instead, you chose him. She slammed her hands on the table, her face flushed with anger. I tried, Cain. I tried to tell you 100 times, but you were too busy to notice. You didn't care. I didn't care? I said, my voice rising despite myself. I've spent 6 years putting you first, Mira. 6 years building a life for us, supporting you, loving you. And this is how you repay me. Her face twisted into something ugly, a mask of rage and guilt. Don't act like you're perfect, she spat. You're so predictable, so boring. I needed something more, something exciting. Exciting? I interrupted, standing up so fast the chair scraped against the floor. You call this exciting? Sneaking around like a coward, lying to my face, humiliating me in front of everyone? That's your idea of excitement. She didn't answer, her defiance crumbling under the weight of my words. I loved you, Mira, I said, my voice breaking for the first time. I trusted you, and you threw it all away for what? For him, her silence was deafening, her guilt finally visible in the way her shoulders slumped, her eyes glistening with tears she refused to shed. I took a step back, my chest heaving with a mix of anger and heartbreak. "We're done," I said, the words heavy with finality. I hope he was worth it. Mira's face crumbled, her bravado slipping away. "Cain, wait." But I didn't wait. I turned and walked away, my steps heavy but deliberate, the noise of the bar fading into the background as I pushed through the doors and into the cold night air. Outside, I stood for a moment, staring at the dark sky, my breath fogging in the chill. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on me, but beneath it, there was something else, something lighter. Freedom. The drive home was a blur, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, my chest still tight with rage and heartbreak. The silence in the car felt oppressive, my mind replaying every moment of the night on an endless loop. Mira's words, her excuses, her betrayal. They burned like acid in my veins. When I pulled into the driveway, the house loomed in front of me like a monument to a life that no longer existed. This was where we built our plans, shared our dreams, laughed until we couldn't breathe. And now it felt empty. Inside, the silence was deafening. I didn't bother turning on the lights. Instead, I sat in the dark living room, a bottle of whiskey in one hand, her laptop in the other. The anger had settled into something colder now, sharper. A determination to uncover every secret she thought she could keep. The laptop screen glowed in the dim room. Her password, always the same, opened it with ease. Her browser history was wiped, her emails neatly organized. But I knew where to look now. I found them quickly, the emails from Nick buried under mundane work correspondence. Reading through them, each line felt like a blade sliding into my back. Inside jokes, plans for secret meetups, complaints about me, painted as the inattentive, boring boyfriend she needed a break from. And then there were the photos. My breath caught in my throat as I stared at the screen, my hand shaking as I scrolled through them. Pictures of them together, laughing, her arms draped around his shoulders like they were a couple without a care in the world. In one, they were in a hotel room, the bed unmade behind them. That was it. I slammed the laptop shut and tossed it onto the coffee table, the sound reverberating through the room. The rage I'd been holding back surged to the surface, consuming me. She had destroyed everything. Our trust, our life, our future. And she'd done it with a smile on her face. I wasn't going to let her walk away from this unscathed. Pulling out my phone, I texted her, "Come home, now." The reply came almost immediately. "I'm staying at Steph's tonight. We'll talk tomorrow." The lie was so blatant it almost made me laugh. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I opened my photos and started taking screenshots of every email, every picture, every piece of evidence I'd uncovered. If she thought she could rewrite this narrative, she was dead wrong. The next morning, she came home just after sunrise. Her face was pale, her hair disheveled, and her usual confidence was noticeably absent. She set her keys on the counter and turned to face me, her expression unreadable. "We need to talk," she said, her voice soft. I leaned back in the chair, my phone in hand. "Oh, we'll talk," I said, my voice cold. "But first, you're going to explain these." I tossed the phone onto the table, the screenshots of her emails and photos glaring back at her. Her eyes widened, her face draining of color. "Cain, Save it," I interrupted, standing and towering over her. "I don't want excuses. I don't want lies. I want you to admit what you've done." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't let them sway me. "You didn't just cheat on me," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "You humiliated me. You lied to my face, made me question myself. And for what? For him? A man who doesn't even have the guts to look me in the eye." Her tears spilled over, but I didn't stop. "I gave you everything, Mira," I said, my voice breaking, "and you threw it all away." "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Not good enough," I said. "You don't get to say sorry and walk away from this. You're going to live with what you've done. You're going to feel the weight of it every day. just like I have to. She sobbed, her hands covering her face, but I felt no sympathy. Not anymore. Get your things and get out, I said, my voice flat. Cain, please, she begged, her voice raw. We can fix this. No, I said firmly. We can't. You broke it, Mira. You broke us. For a moment, she stood frozen, her tears falling silently. Then, without another word, she turned and walked upstairs. I heard her moving around, the sound of drawers opening and closing, her footsteps heavy with defeat. When she came back down, her bags in hand, she stopped at the door and looked back at me. I never meant to hurt you, she said softly. I didn't respond. She hesitated for a moment longer, then opened the door and stepped outside. As the door clicked shut behind her, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Grief, anger, relief. She was gone, and with her the weight of her lies. I poured myself a drink and sat on the couch, staring out the window as the sun rose higher in the sky. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. She had made her choice, and now I was free to make mine.